Hi team, welcome back to a brief and final screencast for Chapter 17. In this screencast, we'll cover Section 17.5 and talk about how we as humans perceive risk and how we can avoid the worst of them. The greatest health risks to humans come from poverty, gender, and lifestyle choices. Poverty poses the greatest risk by far. Being poor makes you more susceptible to malnutrition, infectious disease, and unsafe drinking water, all of which can cause illness and shorten life. This graph shows a number of causes of death and the number of deaths that each one causes each year. For comparison, in red and in parentheses is the number of 200 passenger airplanes that would have to crash each day to be equivalent to it. It shows that actual risk may be very different than perceived risk. This graph shows the extent of poverty around the world. It shows that millions, if not billions of people around the world lack access to things like clean drinking water, enough food for good health, and adequate sanitation facilities. As a result, many lives around the world are cut short. Sociologists talk about a poverty cycle in which poverty creates disease, malnutrition, and poor health. These in turn continue to depress economies and societies, making it more difficult for them to improve themselves or recover. There also seems to be a health risk associated with gender. People who are born male or identify as male tend to engage in more risky behavior. For example, gun ownership is greater in males than it is in females. Also, alcoholism is more common in males than females. All these things have a cumulative effect of shortening lifespan in males. There also seems to be health risk associated with lifestyle choices. Doing things like overeating, smoking, drinking excessively, or driving recklessly can affect health and shorten life. Smoking is the most preventable cause of suffering and premature death in human beings. By some estimates, smoking killed 100 million people in the 20th century. Smoking has known connections to diseases like cancer and probable connections to conditions like dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Nicotine is the addictive drug in tobacco smoke and what makes it difficult to quit smoking. We also need to understand that people who are exposed to tobacco smoke but aren't smoking it are also affected and are also at risk. This is called passive smoking, and what they're inhaling is called secondhand smoke. The graph on the screen shows the death attributed to different causes of death in 2004. Smoking overshadows all the other causes of death. People have used different approaches to reduce smoking. These have included taxes, classifying and regulating nicotine as a drug, banning smoking in public places, and education. The two images on the screen are PSAs trying to educate the public about the dangers of smoking. A car is a piece of technology, and estimating risk from technology is not easy. That's because the reliability of a technology depends on a number of things. The reliability of a system is the product of the technology's reliability and the human's reliability. We do know that human reliability is much lower than technological reliability. People do a poor job of evaluating risk. There are 5 factors that can make people misjudge risk. First, when people fear something, they tend to overestimate the risk associated with it. Second, when people can't control something, they also tend to overestimate the risk of it. Third, when the effects are immediate or catastrophic, people tend to overestimate the risk versus when the effects are chronic or further down the road. Fourth, people have optimism bias. They think things won't happen to them and as a result underestimate risk. And finally, when instant gratification is involved, people think more about short-term pleasure versus long-term effects. Certain principles can help us evaluate and reduce risk. First, we can look at all our available options and compare the risk of each one. Secondly, we can determine how much risk we're willing to accept. Third, we can evaluate how much risk is actually involved. And finally, we can concentrate on evaluating and carefully making important lifestyle choices.